reunited with her father. Her father had had dual citizenship and had fought with the Americans. On these shores, she found a land where you could, without fear, say and think what you wanted, worship and vote as you wanted, and openly object to what you found stupid or offensive. She let us know, as we were growing up, that she considered American democracy a true wonder, a tool to be used at every chance. The Bill of Rights seemed to her almost as sacred as the Bible. This view was implicitly and explicitly reinforced by the rare relatives who made it out of Soviet-controlled Poland and came to lodge with us. My parents never seemed to feel a tension between these heavy strands that comprised their lives, the old world and the new, the religious and the intellectual, the obedient and the activist. I suppose that to them it all seemed obviously interrelated. They had no trouble sending me to confession one day and renewing my subscription to Natural History magazine the next. But as I grew up, I felt the tension one surely must feel when being simultaneously taught the importance of a specific dogma and the importance of freedom from dogma. I knew that some people abandoned their parents' religion as a way of asserting their independence, but for me, losing my religion wasn't about rebellion against my parents. Indeed, I felt quite forlorn at the idea of disappointing my family by admitting my atheism. Still, my parents' religious faith seemed to me incommensurate with our deeply felt faith in America, a faith in freedom of inquiry, in freedom of thought, in the will and right of the people to collectively discover truth and to make their own rules accordingly. And I loved America much more than I loved the Vatican, that place where celibate old men had the right to tell intelligent women what we should think and do. By the time I was in my late teens, while my sister was on her way to becoming a nun, I couldn't help but notice that the place I felt the hope of salvation wasn't church. It was the American Museum of Natural History, that great cathedral of evolution. As often as I could, I would take the train into New York City and lie under the giant blue whale in the great darkened hall of ocean life. Every time I lay there, waiting for the delicious moment when the whale started to move, from optical illusion, science struck me as the obvious and perhaps only way to remain perpetually free from blinding, oppressive dogma. I guess, then, it is not too surprising that I ultimately decided to pursue a PhD in the history and philosophy of science at Indiana University. Exploring the very life and guts of science by studying the history and philosophy of it, this seemed to me the way to make sure that the most anti-dogmatic way of life we had available to us, the scientific way of life, would remain healthy and vigorous. But by the time I moved to Bloomington for graduate school in 1990, not everyone in the academic fields of science studies, the history, philosophy, and sociology of science, felt the same devotion. At that point, Marxist and feminist science studies scholars had for almost 2 decades been producing a large body of work deeply critical of various scientific claims and practices. They had shown how various scientists had, in word and deed, oppressed women, people of color, and poor folks, typically by making problematic scientific claims about them. Harvard biologist Ruth Hubbard, for example, had taken apart pseudo-scientific claims that biology made women naturally less capable of doing science than men. Historians like Londa Schiebinger and Cynthia Eagle-Russett had documented how, over many centuries, patriarchies had deployed the rhetoric of science to represent women as inherently inferior to men. Meanwhile, Hubbard's Harvard colleague Stephen Jay Gould had scrutinized scientific studies purporting to show important racial differences in skull size and IQ, and had shown them to be hopelessly riddled with racist bias. Make no mistake, as a liberal feminist, I was extremely sympathetic to feminist and Marxist science studies. Indeed, the work of scholars like Gould, whose columns in natural history I had devoured as a teenager, struck me as constituting perhaps the most important work of social justice of our time, because it challenged racist and sexist claims about human